Hi there, my name's Simone Bennett. I'm a cloud solution architect at Arcana, and I'm here today to talk to you about simplified cloud adoption with Microsoft's Terraform Azure Landing Zone module. And don't anyone try and steal my snappy title because I know it's catchy. What are you gonna do? Today we're going to cover what's a Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, just a really brief overview for anyone who's a bit confused. We're going to talk about how to get started with the Terraform module. So where do you begin? And then some layered options for making that easier and easier to deploy. We're going to talk about what's needed to make them production ready. And I'm going to share some information on how to stay up to date as well. First of all, I wanted to quickly cover off the two options that you might find. Whether you use Amazon or Microsoft, you would have seen the Cloud Adoption Framework and the Well-Architected Framework. So the Cloud Adoption Framework details the journey end to end to adopt a cloud. So all the way from planning, from defining your strategy, everything like that, all the way through to adoption, governance, and management. And then the Well-Architected Framework looks more at individual workloads that sit on top of your environment. So when you think about one single app, how to make it more secure, how to make it cost optimized and things like that. So when I first started working at Microsoft a few years ago, I found the two a little bit confusing because they do overlap a little bit, but that's how I think about it. And the Cloud Adoption Framework's your journey end to end for cloud adoption, training, planning, designing the landing zones, everything like that. And well-architected is individual workloads and continuous improvement to those workloads. And then when we look at the cloud adoption framework, you can see why it might have been a bit confusing, is because it's quite large. And then when you look at that manage, where it says operate and optimize, that's where well-architected fits in. So when we talk about cloud adoption, we're talking about everything from defining your strategy to planning, to building your environment, adopting it, migrating workloads, applying governance, and then managing and optimizing that from there. And the part of the cloud adoption framework that we're going to talk about today, and probably the part that most people are interested in, is the ready phase. So that's where we look at building your landing zones and building your environment and then getting ready to migrate applications into it. And then some people ask me, what is a landing zone? So I thought I'd pop this slide in here just to make that a bit clearer. For me, it's about starting that journey on a best practice with the start to finish plan. It's about creating well-designed foundations. It's repeatable. It lines up with best practice. And it considers the technical skills of your team. So you build the landing zones to sort of meet your team's requirements. And in general, if you had to summarize, I'd say it offers repeatable package environments, it enables migration, and it simplifies the process of starting from the cloud. And when I say it simplifies the process of starting, what I mean is that most of the time when you start off with cloud, whether it's Azure or AWS or Google or whatever you're using, you'll end up with kind of what's in this box here, which is, I need a VM or a container or a website, and to do that, I need storage and I need a NSG and I need DNS. To do that, I need this. Anyway, so you build it from the bottom up. And then once you've got that sort of core environment that just has the base necessities in there, you might start trying to put more workloads in there. So you have this little box here, you've got the base stuff that you need. But then as you get more mature or you bring on more customers or you migrate more apps or more parts of your company join, you'll quickly hit the edges of this box and need to expand. And when you get to that point, the only way to expand is to refactor, build new subscriptions, and migrate workloads out into the environment where they should be. And so a lot of that's rework, or what we will call brownfield. And if you have the opportunity to do that right from the start and not have to go back and rework it later, that's where landing zones come in. And having the cloud adoption framework align landing zone means you shouldn't need to go back and rework your environment. It should be scaled out and mature, ready to go. So you might still only start with one landing zone in there, like landing zone A2. And you might just have a really small connectivity, identity, and management subscription. If you are a small company and you know you'll always be a small company, you might even collate those three into one subscription, which is a totally valid deployment option. But essentially what it means is those landing zone A2 subscriptions on this diagram, where you have all your workloads and you have all of your policy and things that are related to that workload, will be scalable. So you stamp out versions of that for each workload team, and all the other stuff won't hit the limits or constraints and doesn't need to be locked away from the workload teams. So this is where you would end up with a good, well thought out environment, and you shouldn't have to do any more work to get it back to this point. I'm trying to say less when I present, but I'm failing today because I'm super tired. So this is the example customer journey. This is the journey that our customers that I kind of follow, where we create those platform subscriptions. So we create the core landing zones with identity and manage, and then we have platform subscriptions where we put their workloads. Where it says create platform, that's what we're talking about today. So we're going to use the Terraform module, but you could also use the portal, which I'm not a huge fan of because it's just this black box, deploys a bunch of stuff and it's not very repeatable. But if you want to use that, you can. And if you like Bicep, there's also a Bicep version. Then we talk about subscription vending. So that's where we're stamping out that A2 subscription down there in the bottom corner. We're stamping that out over again, or we're vending it. So all the teams that need a new subscription need to do is create a pull request for your repo, put in some information, and they get a new subscription with all the stuff they need in it. And then Microsoft has a bunch of things to help you make that workload adoption even faster. So you can talk about the API management accelerator. There's an Azure Virtual Desktop Accelerator, Azure VMware Services, etc. So they help you plug in all the stuff you need for those workloads on top of your landing zone and your sub-vending. But you might have your own version of that, and that's what we've built, is our own version of the workload accelerator for our customers. And when you look at the Cloud Adoption Framework documentation, it is just a mammoth amount of doco. And when you look at the repos, they're also a mammoth amount of doco, and they're very big and complicated, and it can be really hard to get started. So how do you even start? Where do you get started? I would suggest starting with the Azure Landing Zone Terraform module. So you can see here it's broken down into the archetypes, which is how you map subscriptions to policy sets. Connectivity does all your core connectivity. Identity is fairly self-explanatory. Management does all the management and government stuff. And then the role assignments for policy connects into those archetypes there. Each of these modules you can use in your code. A lot of it, you can just say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and it will deploy a core environment for you. Or you can go ahead and customize it to the nth degree if you want as well. And there's a really large wiki in the GitHub repo to help you get started. It's got a ton of examples and things like that. Oh, I preempted my own slide. This is the wiki, and you can see there on the right-hand side, it has, level 100, where you're just putting the default landing zone in, and that's the sort of what you'd get if you did the portal option. And then you can go ahead and make it a bit more complicated. You could do Azure Virtual WAN, you could do custom role-based access control roles. And then level 300 is doing a bit more detail around hub and spoke networks and maybe firewall and all those kind of things. And you can keep going through the wiki stages and making it more and more complicated or more and more customized based on your needs. And they have a bunch of examples in there as well, and really detailed documentation on the policies and things like that. So you can start at the start and you can build your way out using the wiki if that's what you would prefer. But yeah, the wiki is also quite large and detailed, and the examples are really complicated, and some of it doesn't click together entirely end to end, like some stuff you still need to figure out. But the Azure Cloud Adoption Framework team have created this amazing resource called the Azure Landing Zone Terraform Accelerator. It's pretty new, and I just think it's the coolest thing ever. because I'm a giant nerd. But essentially what it does is you create a few things. So you just create an account, you create a PAT token I'm using GitHub. So I created a personal access token in GitHub. I created 3 subscriptions, or in my case, I'm using my MSDN to test this out. So I created 1 subscription, and you can do that as well if you like. But if you were doing it in the real world, you would create at least those 3. Then you go ahead and run the script, and it will create a repo for you, and it creates your core environment for you, and then you can keep on adding to the code in the repo. So it's really cool. I have recorded a demo and sped it up a little bit. There's 3 options. You can choose basic, hub networking, or complete. Complete's the most complicated, obviously. I enter in my personal access token. I tell it the name of my GitHub organization. I type the location wrong. I tell it how I want it to name some stuff. And you can see that this subscription for ID, connectivity, and identity and management, I have the same subscription, but in the real world, or for a customer with a greenfield environment, that would be one, not be one, that would be 3 different subscriptions. For my MSDN, I just created the 1 subscription because I wanted to test it out. It's totally up to you to do that. When it's finished, it goes ahead and creates a plan, and you can see everything it's going to create for you there, and you do yes to completely apply, and it goes ahead and just creates everything for you. So it might not be the final product that you want, but it's a really good baseline, and you get the code in a repo so that you can build on top of that code, which I think is excellent, and a much better starting point than, say, using the portal, where you just end up with an environment and it's hard to kind of see what's being deployed. In this case, you can go into the repo that's created for you, and you can modify it. So you can see the variables, you can see what's in there, and you could add your own editor. You can see the config.yaml. That's all the things that I typed into that window. And you can see the main.tf. So you can see how a lot of that stuff is easy with the module already, but it puts it in as a starter for you. So you could go ahead and say, oh, actually, no, I don't want BGP or things like that. And then you can see in the portal, it's created the resources. Say my platform, it's created my managed identities, and it's created Terraform state storage, which is not in a file share. It is in a container. There we go. I found it in the end. So it's really excellent. It's a great tool. And if you don't know where to get started, and you find the whole CAF Docker a bit complicated, and then you find the Terraform wiki also a bit complicated, but you really want to dig in and see how you might be able to use Cloud Adoption Framework and Terraform to build your landing zones, this is an excellent accelerator for that. This is the config.yaml that I talked about. So when you say complete, which is the most complicated option, you can go into the config.yaml. You just create a file on your local machine or wherever you'd like, and you point it to that. And you can put all the things you want in there, like your network schema, IP addresses, names for things, subscriptions, etc. And then that inputs.yaml is all those things I typed in manually. So if you're testing over and over again, I definitely suggest using the inputs.yaml so that you don't have to keep typing those things over and over again and making typos like I did in the demo. Okay, that's great. You have this base vanilla landing zone now, and really you can't go ahead and just put workloads in there as that is. It's the base landing zone. It's the plumbing, it's electronics, but that's it, right? It's got nothing customized for your, workloads or your environment. So how do we make that production ready? There's a giant link at the bottom that has some good Docker from Microsoft. That's where you can start, and it's very thorough. But I'm just going to summarize it on this slide. And as you can see, there's a lot of things to consider, but you could work your way through those things one by one and see what is pertinent for your environment. You might choose Defender, you might choose Sentinel, you might not have an IT service management system, so you don't need to create connector, things like that. So you can pick and choose what suits you. At Arcana, for our customers, their very vanilla baseline that we stamp out for them includes subscription vending, where I talked about stamping out that subscription over and over again. We create action groups in line with the Cloud Adoption Framework guidance that each subscription should have its own action group, and we create advisor alerts that go to those action groups. So each workload owner can get all the Azure advisor alerts for that workload and understand how to keep it well architected moving forward. So once we leave, those subscriptions owners still get notified if they could make cost savings or security improvements or reliability improvements, etc., based along the well architected guidelines. As a side note, if you don't use Azure Advisor, go check it out. It's free, it's already enabled, and it's got a lot of great recommendations. We configure core platform logging and monitoring based on the customer's requirements, but we put some basic stuff in there just as a starter. We put base catch-all backups. We put Azure policy and some starter guardrails in place just to help the teams not make any huge mistakes. We put budgets in place so that people know if they accidentally spin something up that's really expensive. We put security baseline. For some customers, we make their environment multi-tenant or more resilient. And we create a repo with a code space with all the tools they need for Terraform and Azure, so they can get started building their workloads easily once their subscription has been vended. And so for us, our environment looks pretty similar to that diagram. We've got our managing governance, we stamp out the workloads, we have a connectivity, identity management, subscription, we have sandboxes, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty much what you saw in the Microsoft doco. That's what we deploy as well. And for those items that I listed, I thought I'd quickly give you a bit more detail. So if you're looking to do multi-tenant, Microsoft has excellent advice. I was actually surprised by how concise and easy to follow but thorough it is. So I'm not even going to try and replicate it. I'll just go check out that documentation and follow it along for multi-tenant. If you want to know about subscription vending or how to do subscription democratization, or how I was talking about stamping out subscriptions, Matt, Kevin, and Jack in the CAF team have a great little video here that you can watch that explains it and have a few demos and things. So I'd start there. If you're not sure about Azure policy, the first thing you can do is run a tool called AZGovViz, and it will go and look at what policy you already have deployed, and is it out of date? Is it old built-in policy that's been converted to, is it old custom policies being converted to built-in that you could change or anything else like that? So start with that tool. If you're greenfield, you don't need that. But if you've got anything already working, then I would definitely suggest using AZGovViz as a starting point before you do policy changes. And if you don't have anything, there's a repo called Azure Monitor Baseline Alerts. It's in preview. And it's been widely adopted by the Microsoft teams. Apparently, all the product teams are starting to contribute to it. So that's promising and really useful. So it provides best guidances for monitoring every workload you could think of, and you can just take the policy and implement it. So if you're not sure where to get started once you build your landing zone, I would suggest going here, grabbing the policies that apply to the core environment that you have and the workloads that you might have. And you can see that patterns.alz folder that's got all the landing zone related policy. That would be really good. And implement the ones that suit you, but you don't have to come and invent them by yourself, and you don't have to figure out what to monitor across the board. There's a good starting place for you there. So like the Accelerator, this is a policy accelerator. When I talk about cost management and tagging that we put in for our customers, we put in inherited tagging just to try and make sure we catch everything, but also because there's around 2,000 resources in Azure, but only 625 can be manually tagged, using code or the portal. Whereas using tag inheritance, you get to tag a bunch more that can be used for cost management. So it's a good tip to turn on the tag inheritance. We use Azure policy to do that. So every time you create a new resource, it just inherits the tags from the resource group. And then your finance teams, your management teams can easily see what's costing what, or who owns it, or when does it expire, things like that. Finally, every so often, it could be really good to go through the Azure Landing Zone Review checklist and just make sure your landing zones, or the ways you've customized them or how you've built them, are best practices. The Fast Track team does cloud migration all day, every day, as a team of absolute geniuses who I loved working with when I was at Microsoft. There was nothing they didn't know. So their review checklist is an absolute gold mine. So I'd suggest grabbing that and having a look at it, maybe even before you put your first workload in, go through and check off anything that's important to you and flag anything that maybe has been missed. Okay, excellent. So that's what's Cloud Adoption Framework. That's how to get started deploying the Cloud Adoption Framework, landing zone with Terraform and the module or the starter module or the ALZ Accelerator from the team. And I also kind of went through, how does I kind of customize that to be production ready for our customers and the tools we use and how you can also do that. But one other really important thing to do is stay up to date. So you don't want to be building enhancements for your personal version if the Cloud Adoption Framework team's already working on them or their services that might be deprecated, things like that. This is how I stay up to date for my team. The most central place is the What's New page on the ALZ, and that covers everything, not just Terraform. So that covers landing zones, enterprise scale, bicep, the portal experience, and Terraform. But it's still a good place to check out, or I have a Power Automate automation that goes and checks all my blogs for updates and sends me a digest, just like the old school RSS readers. So maybe you could just do something like that as well to save going to all these places and getting updates. One of my favorite places, especially when I'm looking at what we're going to work on next internally for our product, is the Terraform teams roadmap. So you can see what they're looking at now. So they're saying, look at those diagnostic blog policies that they've got, and they're going to make them built in. So if I was just about to use those, I might go check that card or follow it and see what they're going to build in. If I was about to deploy Microsoft Machine Agent, I might also pause on that because you can tell that's about to be replaced. They're working on it right now. If I was looking at renaming my landing zone, I wouldn't worry about it because they've parked that. And then things they've completed. So for example, the Terraform Accelerator, that's how you can tell that these things exist all of a sudden. So if you miss the calls or anything, this is a really good place to check it out. But speaking of calls, I love to join these when they're in the Australian time zone. But if you're not, that's okay. I think they flip the time zones every other call. But either way, you can catch a recording. And my favorite toxic trait is to miss the call anyway and watch it at 2x speed and just pause where I need to. So if you're like me, this is ideal. You can catch the latest one, which was in December last year. And it's a goldmine of everything they're working on, everything they've updated, and all the Microsoft team is there as well. So you can ask questions and give them feedback and see any previews, stuff like that. I would suggest this is the one call I try to always catch up on. But then I'm a nerd for landing zones, so maybe you're not that interested. So that's the link to the community calls there. It was a bit long to fit on the last slide, so I thought I'd put them all in this one slide so you can take a screenshot or maybe grab the deck and then have them all in one place. The roadmap link is there as well. And this little video that you can see is the repo where Jack Tracy is going and creating an issue or putting in some feedback or putting in a feature request for the enterprise scale Azure landing zones. So if you want to give feedback to the Bicep, Terraform, or just landing zone team, you can do that by creating an issue on the repo. So the same place where the roadmap is, go ahead and create those issues and you can see them there. People can vote on them. There's discussions and you can also just contribute to the repo too. So one of the guys on my team found a bug with a firewall, Ryan, and he just submitted a fix as a pull request and the team approved it and it was in the latest version. So if you find a bug and you want to contribute and fix it or you have an enhancement, I know the team's really keen to work with everybody. So go ahead and don't be afraid to submit it. I found the CAF team to be really lovely. So they're not going to rouse on you if it's not perfect. I'm sure they'll give you feedback and coaching if it's your first time. Cool. And that's me. I'm not sure if this was too short, but I can just sort of hang on this slide for a while. But that's my LinkedIn if you'd like to add me or send me any questions or give me feedback if you think there's stuff I missed. Or you can hit me up on Blue Sky, which, new Twitter. I'm really keen to know if you watch this or if it was helpful or what tools you use, if I missed anything out. So please do get in touch. And thank you for your time today.